There's this thing where through history, people have been really reluctant to admit an AI is truly intelligent. So, for example, people used to think that AI would surely be truly intelligent if it solved chess, and then it solved chess, and you're like, no, that's just algorithms. And then they said, well, maybe it would be truly intelligent if it could do philosophy, and then it could write philosophical discourses, but you're like, no, we just understand those are algorithms. I think there already is something similar with like, is the AI misaligned? Is the AI evil? But then whenever something goes wrong, people are just like, oh, that's the algorithm. So for example, I think like 10 years ago, if you had asked like, when will we know that misalignment is really an important thing to worry about? People would say, like, oh, if the AI ever lies to you. But of course, AIs lie to people all the time now, and everybody just kind of dismisses it because we understand why it happens. Or like 5 years ago, they might have said, well, if an AI threatens to kill someone. And I think Bing like threatened to kill a New York Times reporter during an interview. And everyone's just like, oh yeah, AIs are like that. But I think this is just going to keep happening where no matter what evidence we get, people are going to think, oh yeah, that's not the AI turns evil thing that people have worried about. That's not the Terminator scenario. And I think that once 1,000 of these natural consequences of training add up, the AI is evil in the same way that like once the AI can do chess and philosophy and all these other things, eventually you got to admit it's intelligent.
Yeah.
So I think that each individual failure, like maybe it will make the national news. Maybe people will say, oh, it's so strange that GPT-7 did this particular thing. And then they'll train it away and then it won't do that thing. And there will be some point at the process of becoming super intelligent at which it, I don't want to say makes the last mistake because you'll probably have like gradually decreasing number of mistakes to some asymptote, but the last mistake that anyone worries about. And after that, it will be able to do its own thing.
I also don't want China to like get to superintelligence before the US. That would be quite bad. You know, my P-Doom is sort of infamously high, like 70%.
Oh, wait, really?
And like part of the reason for that is just that like I feel like a bunch of stuff has to go right. Like I feel like we can't just like unilaterally slow down and have China go take the lead. That also is a terrible future.
Yeah.
But like we can't also just like completely race because for the reasons I mentioned previously about alignment, I think that if we just, you know, go all out on racing, we're going to lose control of our AIs, right? And so we have to somehow like thread this needle. That's all just for the alignment stuff, but then there's like the concentration of power stuff where like somehow in the middle of doing all of that, the powerful people who are involved need to like somehow negotiate a truce between themselves to share power and then ideally spread that power out amongst the government and get the legislative branch involved. You know, somehow that has to happen too. Otherwise you end up with like this horrifying dictatorship or oligarchy. And like, so it feels like all that stuff has to go right. Yeah, it's kind of rough.
Can you explain your thoughts on why transparency through this period is important?
Yeah, so I think traditionally in the AI safety community, there's been this idea, which I myself used to believe, that like it's an incredibly high priority to basically have way better information security. And like if you're going to be trying to build AGI, you should be like not publishing your research because that helps other less responsible actors build AGI. And the whole game plan is for like a responsible actor to get to AGI first and then stop and burn down their lead time over everybody else and spend that lead on making it safe and then proceed. And so if you're like publishing all your research, then there's less lead time because your competitors are going to be close behind you. That's like one reason why I think historically people such as myself have been like pro-secrecy even. But I think that I've now become somewhat disillusioned and think that even if we do have like, you know, a 3-month lead, a 6-month lead between like the leading US project and any serious competitor, it's not at all foregone conclusion that they will burn that lead for good purposes. I think the default outcome is that they just, you know, smoothly continue on. And part of why I think this is because this is what a lot of the people at the company seem to be planning and saying they're going to do. A lot of them are basically like, the AIs are just going to be misaligned by then. They seem pretty good right now. Oh yeah, sure, there were like a few of those, you know, issues that various people have found, but like we're ironing them out. It's no big deal. Like that's like what a huge amount of those people think. Yeah, so basically like I've become more disillusioned that they'll like actually use that lead in any sort of like reasonable, appropriate way.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of intellectual progress that has to happen for the alignment problem to be more solved than it currently is now. I think that currently there's various alignment teams at various companies that aren't talking that much with each other. And then there's a bunch of like smart people in academia that are basically not activated because they don't take all this stuff seriously yet. And they're not really, you know, waking up to superintelligence yet. What I would like to see is society as a whole starting to freak out as the trend lines start upwards and things get automated and you have these fully autonomous agents and they start using Neuralese and HiveMind. As all that exciting stuff starts happening in the data centers, I would like it to be the case that the public is following along and then getting activated, and all of these other researchers are reading the safety case and critiquing it and doing little ML experiments on their own tiny compute clusters to examine some of the assumptions in the safety case and so forth. And a sort of one way of summarizing it is that currently there's going to be 10 alignment experts in whatever inner silo of whatever company is in the lead. And the technical issue of making sure that AIs are actually aligned is going to fall roughly to them. But what I would like to be is a situation where it's more 100 or 500 alignment experts spread out over different companies and in nonprofits that are sort of all communicating with each other and working on this together. I think we're substantially more likely to get the technical stuff right if it's something like that.
OpenAI had this really interesting result recently where they're hey, they often tell you if they want to hack, in the chain of thought itself. And it's important that you don't train against the chain of thought where they tell you they're going to hack, because they'll still do the hacking if you train against it. They just won't tell you about it. You can imagine very naive regulatory, there's some department that says, if you catch your AI saying that they want to take over or do something bad, then you'll be really heavily punished. Your immediate response as a lab to just be okay, let's train them away from saying this. So you can imagine all kinds of ways in which a top-down mandate from the government to the labs of safety would just really backfire. And given how fast things are moving, maybe it makes more sense to leave these kinds of implementation decisions or even high-level strategic decisions around alignment to the labs.
I also have worried about that exact example. I would summarize the situation as the government lacks the expertise and the companies lack the right incentives. I think that if the government wades in and tries to make more specific regulations along the lines of what you mentioned, it's very plausible that it'll end up backfiring for reasons like what you mentioned. On the other hand, if we just trust it to the companies, they're in a race with each other. And they're full of people who have convinced themselves that this is not a big deal. There just is so much incentive pressure for them to win and beat each other and so forth. And so even though they have more of the relevant expertise, I also just don't trust them to do the right things.
What the normal person, what should their reaction to this be? Sort of, I don't know if emotionally is the right word, but in sort of their expectation of what their life might look like, even in the world where there's no doom.
By no doom, you mean no misaligned AI doom?
That's right.
Yeah. Even if you think the misalignment stuff is not an issue, which many people think, there's still the concentration of power stuff. And so I would strongly recommend that people get more engaged, think about what's coming, and try to steer things politically so that our ordinary liberal democracy continues to function and we still have checks and balances of power and stuff, rather than this insane concentration in a single CEO or in maybe 2 or 3 CEOs or in the president, right? Ideally, we want to have it so that the legislature has a substantial amount of power over the spec, for example.